Okay, ladies and gentlemen, come dive into the open minds where you can broaden your perspectives, expand your horizons, and open your eyes to a reality never thought possible. Just remember, once you open that door, there's no going back. I am your host, Robbie Diesel. This is the Open Mind Show, and tonight I have Kenney Irish. Welcome to the show, Kenney.
Hey, my friend. Happy Tuesday.
I'm happy Tuesday, man. I'm happy to have you on. I've actually listened to you a couple times on Coast to Coast, so I followed you from there. Uh, Amongst being you're in a punk band, right?
I haven't been in a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to play in a bunch of punk and hardcore bands. Did some touring, put some albums out. Was in some magazines, newspapers, radio, and but the music business is a vampire. So
Yes, it is.
yeah. So I still play bass, guitar, drums. I've got a setup in my my music room, or like the movie Step Brothers. I don't know if you ever remember that. Did you see that movie?
Yeah, yeah,
The Beat Factory.
yeah.
So I've got it, all still set up in there. Every once in a great while, I'll get together with some people, but I'm getting to that point where I'm probably gonna have to get some people together and start playing out again, because it's been a long time. I'd say maybe the last time I played outside of my house was probably like 4 years ago.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, regardless, it seems like you have your hands full. You're into marketing. You're a number one bestseller on Amazon. With some books. You got a couple books out, right?
Yes, I have three of them. I've got two young readers chapter books for like ages like 5 to like 9, right around that range. And then this last March, I released through Beyond the Fray Publishing, American Cryptids in Pursuit of the Elusive Creatures, and it hit number one twice in a bunch of different categories. So it's done very well. And as of today, January 18th, I just re-signed the follow-up to American Cryptids with the publisher. So that should be out, I'd say, probably late summer this year.
Wow, congratulations. I just ordered that on Amazon last week. I was hoping it was going to come in today, but it's not going to be here till tomorrow. Super excited to dive into that. You're also part of the New York Bigfoot Society. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. We're oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we're a group outside of we're just outside of Albany, New York. Our research area is just outside of Whitehall, New York, which is the epicenter of Sasquatch sightings on the East Coast. But the group does more than just Bigfoot. When it originally started, I think the group started probably like 13 years ago. It was way before my time. That was like the main focus, but since then, and since I've joined, because I study all kinds of different cryptids and legends, we've definitely branched off. And there's what's it, New York, or I'm sorry, Tri-City New York Paranormal Society, which is also like the sister group of the New York Bigfoot Society. The leader of both of them, his name is Gary Robusto. He's been doing paranormal investigation for like between 25 to 27 years, and he's the one that started the New York Bigfoot Society. And so it's both great groups, very scientific approach, just because that's kind of Gary's background. He's actually back in school learning more in his 40s, trying to bring more to the subject and better understanding to the subject. And so it's both groups are very, very well respected, and I'm blessed to be a part of one of them.
Right. And I think the branching out part is kind of natural, because I think that like the Bigfoot or the Sasquatch is kind of like the base for anybody who has interest in cryptid creatures. Is like you always start out with Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and then you kind of grow from there as you get into it and stuff like that, and you start hearing about other stuff like Mothman and Chupacabra and all kinds of other creatures and sightings and stuff like that, even UFOs. But yeah,
well, I was just gonna say, especially in like the last like 15 years, because like I always say, prior to that, nobody, there was groups of people that talked about cryptids and Sasquatch, but it was a lot of the TV shows that really kind of made it mainstream. So a lot of people are talking more about it than they did years ago. For me, my first cryptid, because I grew up in northern Vermont, was Champ, because I grew up near Lake Champlain. So it's funny because a lot of people see me as like a Bigfoot guy, but in reality, like I'm a Champ guy. Like that's my heart. I actually just joined the organizing committee for the Champ Day Festival they have every year in Port Henry, New York. So this will be my first time being part of organizing it. Well, last year I just appeared at it. So yeah, I mean, there's so many cryptids out there, but I mean, your biggest ones are right off the bat would be Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, and in Mothman. Those seem to be like the three that really stick right out. And Dogman's really taken off in the last 10 years too.
Dogman, yep. Yeah, see, and that's kind of reiterating what I said is like, yeah, it's become mainstream for Bigfoot now. And then once you dive into that, you start hearing about other stories from people that are like really into that stuff. But for anybody listening that doesn't know, your main priority right now is cryptid research, right? Like that's kind of your thing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, a lot of the research that I do is based off of indigenous people and Native American lore. I like to kind of go way back to find out what they were saying about these creatures, because a lot of them talked about different serpentine creatures as well as Bigfoot. But again, Bigfoot seems to be the main focus. But I like to go back and find out, try to find like the earliest information, because as time has progressed and technology's progressed now, I mean, everybody is able to talk about something, where if I go back before like technology took over our lives, you can really pull up a lot of information and kind of get the rawest information regarding what they believe to be Sasquatch or some type of serpentine creature or flesh and blood and spirit. So, but it really comes down to depending on which tribe you look into and what their stories that were passed down from generation to generation consists of.
And what does cryptid mean exactly?
It's it's funny you ask that. Because I've never had anybody actually ask me that. I think it's like cryptozoology. My understanding is that cryptid comes from the title of cryptozoology, which is the study of undiscovered or
unidentified.
Undiscovered, unidentified, not necessarily represented by science or believed by science. So it's kind of like, and it's also animals that have been considered to be extinct. Mm-hmm. A lot of cryptozoologists actually go out looking for different animals that have, again, extinct in certain areas. Like out here, they say that there's no mountain lions in New York anymore. And a lot of the time when people think New York, they think New York City. I'm in upstate New York, so I'm like, near the Adirondacks. Yeah. Exactly. So, we have mountain lion sightings all the time, and different pictures. So again, a lot of cryptozoologists go out looking for animals that are supposed to be extinct and recognized by science, where again you've got something like Sasquatch that isn't recognized by science.
Yeah, so I feel like we could probably make a couple episodes out of your research into cryptozoology, but I feel like we should focus on just one tonight, which would probably be Bigfoot, naturally.
Sure.
Being part of the Bigfoot Society. So what really drew you into like the interest into Bigfoot or cryptids in general?
Just like all young little guys. I was about 3 or 4 and just loved Godzilla, King Kong, the Incredible Hulk. Like that, those were like my go-tos. And somebody had said to me that Godzilla lived in Lake Champlain, which was, they're referring to Champ. And that just got me even more hooked, because I mean, watching these shows and these movies on TV as a young kid, you're just blown away by Frankenstein, the Wolfman, all that, just drawn in. But then, when somebody says something to you about a creature actually living in a lake that you live near, I mean, that just totally, I mean, you're talking a whole paradigm shift from like make believe to like, oh my God, you know, something's got to be real here. And
In your own
just
backyard too.
exactly. Because again, you know, I'm from northern Vermont, so I lived near Burlington, Vermont. So at that time, and so I mean, anytime I was near the lake, I mean, if we had like a 4th of July, like family get together at a beach, like I'm standing there on the beach just watching the water for waves at like 6 years old. So, you know, I'm not going in the water because I don't want to get distracted and miss something. So it kind of really started way back then. Again, you know, most little boys, you know, growing up loved monsters and loved something like that. And I just never grew out of it. I thought I did at one point in time. You know, I thought, you know, kind of, you know, in freshman year in high school, you know, stuff like that. Oh, now I got to find myself. And then my senior year, I just reverted right back. I'm just like, all right, this is what I love.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like you hit it too with when you said Godzilla and then Champ. Is there a lot of mistakes or different names for the same cryptid creatures? Because I feel like there's like you could probably list 1,000 creatures and they could probably be narrowed down to like maybe 100 from like different cultures or just different people naming them. Do you think that that's a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. Like for instance, I mean, we say Sasquatch, we say Bigfoot. That's 2 names. There's literally hundreds of names that have been given. Like, you know, another common one is hairy man,
Or Yeti, abominable
exactly,
snowman. Yeah.
exactly. So there's, it's just, it really depends on like the area and the time that the name was given. Like, I mean, Bigfoot was, I mean, that was in, you know, this, what was it, 1960? Of course, I'm gonna forget. But like, you know, prior to that, you know, there was nobody called the creature Bigfoot. It was a news article that, you know, ended up putting it out saying Bigfoot, and that's how it kind of got its name. And that was, I believe, in the 1960s. And again, I should know this, but you know, age gets to you, and then after a while, you know, it's everything just kind of convolutes in your head.
Right. It's all good. So you Bigfoot. So I had a Navajo tribesman on here that suggested that Sasquatch or Bigfoot are like high vibrating frequency beings. So like when you see those pictures that people try to get, they're always like a blur or like
Right.
where they follow their feet prints and then they just disappear. He suggested that they vibrate at a higher frequency that we can't see with our filtered eyes unless they want us to. So they come into our spectrum
Right.
and lower their vibrations. Have you found any proof or anything to suggest that claim?
Not personally. A lot of my experiences, like I'm one of those guys, I haven't seen anything. I always like to say I'm late to the party. You know, I'm the guy that's always there after something happens. I've experienced a lot of weird, strange situations, but for the most part, I talk to a lot of different people that have witnessed something that they can't necessarily understand, and that's you know, a lot of people have mentioned that you know, they're interdimensional and they're able to, you know, disappear. I've had people say that they've actually watched one right in front of them just disappear, and not just disappear like boom, it's gone, like actually just kind of like crumble like to the ground and it's gone. Individuals that have said that they've seen one walk behind a tree and not come out on the other side. So they're saying that there's different portals. We know what the word paranormal means, but a lot of people associate paranormal with ghosts. A lot of people say that they're ghosts. Other people actually even say that they're demons, and that they've been sent up from hell. Other people say that they're extraterrestrial. So it really, I mean, there's so many different avenues that you can go down. And then when you get on that path where you're kind of coming up with like some, I don't want to say conclusion, but you kind of feel like you're getting somewhere with it. And then all of a sudden something comes up out of nowhere that just changes your whole shift thinking in everything that you're doing. And again, for me, for the longest time, Sasquatch, flesh and blood. For me, that was the longest time. But since I've talked to so many people, and there's so many credible people out there that have witnessed something that they can't explain, and they weren't looking for it either.
Mhm.
So those are the people that are really credible to me. And I've heard stories where people have seen one, just run through the woods, not disappear. It disappears by the fact that it gets camouflaged by the woods, but they can still hear it in the distance. I've talked to people who were very credible, who right in front of their eyes, again, just kind of crumbled, disappeared, or was walking in front of them and then just disappeared. Individuals that have come across footprints that just seem to vanish and not go any further. There are reasons for that, possibly. Like, for instance, I tested my own footprints, meaning I walked on the ground, just kept looking back at my footprints. And then there were times where the ground looked exactly the same. But yeah, I didn't leave any footprints, depending on the water underneath the ground and different levels. Exactly. But then you also have to take in consideration when you come across one of those situations where it's snow and then they just stop.
Right.
So again, this subject, it's what I love about it and it's what I hate about it, is that you never really get an answer. I mean, I embrace the mystery and I embrace the thought of the unexplained, but at the same time, it can really drive you nuts.
Yeah, I feel like with conspiracy theorists or truth seekers, it's the same thing, because we don't ever get an answer, and sometimes the answers, when they do come, they're answers we don't want to hear. You know what I mean?
Sure. So yeah. I agree. I 100% agree.
Yeah, so definitely I can agree with you there about how it's frustrating, and it also keeps that hunger and that drive for wanting to learn more and chase more. So you said that you used to lean towards flesh and blood. Now what are you more leaning towards?
I'm probably like 50% now. 50%, flesh and blood. And probably 30% extraterrestrial, 20%, interdimensional. But at the same time, if you think about it, extraterrestrial can be flesh and blood.
Absolutely.
I mean, when we speak of, the grays or extraterrestrial beings, a lot of the time we talk about them as flesh and blood. So, I mean, if I had to pick between interdimensional and paranormal or extraterrestrial, I'm going to go with the extraterrestrial, just for the simple fact that there are, again, very credible people that have claimed to have witnessed or had an encounter with what they believe to be a Sasquatch and some type of extraterrestrial spacecraft that they saw at the same time. And why couldn't it be? Like that is a good explanation, I guess. It's not a conclusion, but again, an explanation. I mean, you go back to 2020 where, the government finally decided to say, yes, UFOs exist. They didn't say aliens, they said UFOs. But now it's just a matter of time for another pandemic to hit, and then they'll release more information to cover, to distract us. But so I'm thinking, if I had to go down a path, I would definitely probably say extraterrestrial, because again, why not? There are unidentified flying objects. The universe is huge. We haven't explored it all. So, I mean, in the other thing too, if you see something disappear in front of you, maybe that's their technology, if they're coming here to this planet, I mean, their technology is way higher than ours. So why couldn't they do the Star Trek beam me up Scotty type of situation?
Right. Or have a cloaking device or something. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, somebody said to me too, and I'd never even thought about this, and I love bringing this up on any show that I'm on. They're like, of course the government knows about it, and that Bigfoots are extraterrestrial. Where do you think Chewbacca came from?
Right.
And it's just like, does he not fit what a Bigfoot is described as?
Absolutely. That's what I would picture him as. That's what he's pictured as most people describe him.
Exactly. Even though most aliens aren't, or extraterrestrials aren't described in that manner. But still, I mean, there's got to be some reason for it. And again, I'm not one of those conspiracy theory guys, which I appreciate every single one of them, because they definitely make me think. But who knows? And again, it's the mystery that just kind of keeps me going, because as much as I want answers, I really don't, because once I get some of those answers, for me, it's, for some people, it's going to be just the beginning.
Yeah.
For me, I think it wouldn't end it, but I think it would take away some of my drive and passion that I have behind the subject.
Absolutely. And I don't know if they still have it on there, but the CIA had at one point on their website, if Hollywood needed help with their production, they would be more than willing to step in and help them with their productions for movies, for as far as like sci-fi and stuff goes. And then you
Really?
go back to like Stanley Kubrick and stuff like that,
Mhm.
Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. There was a lot of people that speculated that he had outside help from either real experiences or people that had real experiences. So
Mhm.
I think you're right up that right alley with the, where did they come up with Chewbacca? Well, Bigfoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
well, that's I wasn't aware of that, so that's very cool. That's again, that's why I love talking with different people, and because you learn these little tidbits of information that you didn't have, and again, unfortunately, in some ways, it as it sounds like it. Oh, well, there's a connection there. As we talk, we're going to find something that throws us off, and
oh,
it sends us in
absolutely.
another direction. So
That's what, when I was listening to that Navajo tribesman, when he was talking about different frequencies, I was like, why did I never even think of that? I was like, 'cause I've watched Bigfoot stuff, I've dived into it and all that stuff, like I have everything else, and I just never put that connection. Like, oh, it makes sense how they disappear, why they're always blurry in the pictures. I was like, all right, well, that's a good take.
a lot of people say, well, how come a lot of trail cams haven't gotten pictures, or they are blurry? Well,
Mhm.
of course, there's those theories that, when you think about it, we as humans, we're not as sensitive as animals are. They have a higher sense of sensitivity. So we may not hear that humming coming out of that camera. We may not hear, pick up on any type of frequency coming off of anything, but something that lives there, and it's their domain, they're master of their domain, and they're a lot more sensitive. They may pick up on something like that and avoid it, because in reality, it's a great question. Thousands of trail cams, but the pictures are either blurry or there's nothing there.
Yeah. Yep.
So why is that? So
it has to be aware. That's the only explanation.
I mean, if something's different in my house, I mean, I'm the master of my domain, my house. If something's different and somebody moves something or somebody puts something up different, when I walk in the house, I'm going to notice that.
Right.
I'm going to pick up on it. I will walk in and I will have no clue that my wife just had her hair done or cut, but I will notice in my house that, something's been moved. Something is not where it was supposed to be. Something new is here. So I have to believe something that, that lives in the woods and is trying not to be seen.
Right.
Would be on edge enough to know its surroundings and be the master of its surroundings, if you will.
Right. And I don't even know if a lot of people realize too that aren't like veteran hunters or don't use those deer cams, but when the night vision comes on, they have little red glowing lights on them to pick up the stuff. So like we're talking about different frequencies and heightened senses and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like that may pick, like you said, it might trigger them right away to where they're aware of that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. So being part of the Bigfoot Society and not having a sighting yet, do you regularly go out and try to have sightings? Is that something that you're searching for?
I am, and from folks that have had an actual sighting for what they believe to be a Sasquatch, they tell you that I'm actually, because I consider them blessed, but they actually consider me blessed that I haven't, because they tell you, once you see something like that, it changes everything for you, and everything that you kind of knew, that you thought you knew. So you've got people that are going out there that are looking, and then you've got people that are going out there that aren't looking. 9 times out of the 10, the people who aren't looking are the ones that end up having the encounters. I think over time, because so much Hollywood has been brought into the subject, that a lot of people are going out into the forest and bring a lot of Hollywood to it. and not really paying attention to what's going on, trying to draw something in that's probably already there. So they're missing it because they're banging on trees or they're yelling. Now we've used those different, techniques as well. We're not saying that not to use them, but again, I think there's so many groups that are going out in the woods that they're doing that. If you think back to the Native Americans who said that they lived in harmony with them,
right?
I mean, what were their lives like? They sat there and they became one with nature. They became peace in the area there. I can't tell you how many times I'm out there and I'm looking at my phone. I'm how many things are walking by me? What am I missing because I'm so distracted?
Yeah, we're not tapped in.
Exactly. So, for instance, the gentleman that is the founder of the group, Gary, who I'd mentioned earlier, he actually had his first official sighting of what he believed to be a Sasquatch a year ago this month. Wow. And he was, again, he's a science guy. He's back in college right now, learning more. His education and background is in animal behavior, as well as he's a hunter. He's a bushwhacker. Like he'll go on, 10-mile hikes on his day off just to turn around and walk back. He's the guy you'd send out to rescue somebody who disappeared. So he knows what's there. He knows what isn't there. He knows exactly what a footprint of a bear is, he knows all that. And he happened to be out one day, his day off, not looking, just out, just doing this thing, just hiking. And he happened to look up on this edge, this like cliff, and he said what he saw looking back at him was what he believed to be a Sasquatch. And again, this is the guy that if you show him a picture, he can 9 times out of 10 tell you what it is. If you play a sound for him, he can tell you what animal it is. And he's hurt a lot of people's feelings by being honest to what they brought to him. So the fact that he's flabbergasted and blown away right now, I mean, that's when I say credible people, that's what I mean. Individuals that can distinguish between a bear double step and something that they can't really explain. And it was a crazy event too, because he took his phone out, he took a picture of it. Of course, it's blobby, it's in the distance, but he's been doing it long enough to know to immediately take a picture right after to show that object and that blob isn't there anymore. So he's got those pictures, and I love telling the story, even though it's not my story, but he's like, tell it. Moments later, 2 forest rangers came out of nowhere. And the strange thing about it is usually if you're out in the woods and a forest ranger comes out, they go up one side of you and down the other. Yeah. And it's usually just one of them. It's normally not 2, but there were 2 of them. He was the one doing all the talking. Gary was. And like they were kind of standoffish. So it's kind of like they were there because like they were maybe tracking something. We don't know 100%, but again, very different experience from what he's used to. Mm-hmm. And then again, you're talking 5-6 miles in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, he was out there, and they just turned and went off the other way, and he went off his other way. And that was it.
He was pretty much saying that even the encounter with the 2 park rangers was a little weird. Like they were already onto something or weirded out by something.
Yeah. That's exactly. So he's thinking, and again, no proof to it that's what they were there doing. But again, I mean, you're talking, I mean, a lot of the time, a lot of the forest rangers, they will go way out into the woods, but a lot of the time, they'll stay on the edge. They'll go in the woods, but they'll stay near wherever they have a vehicle. This was literally 5-6 miles in the middle of nowhere. Wow. I mean, just in the Adirondacks, where people go, get lost, never seen again, or disappear because they want to disappear. Right. So again, just everything that you put together and taking the fact that it was Gary that had that experience, just to me, just makes it takes it to that next level of not just strange, a lot of people saying it, because a lot of the people that I've talked to, again, very credible, but I don't know them. I don't know them very well. Gary, I've gotten to know very well. And he's not that guy that's going to say, this is what it was. And if he can't explain it, then there's something to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've interviewed a couple paranormal investigators on this show before too, and I feel like a lot of them that I've talked to are they're skeptics. So if he was a paranormal investigator or still is, they're going out to debunk, like you said, hurt people's feelings. Like, hey, you might have seen a ghost, you might have seen Bigfoot, but I'm here to tell you, you didn't. I'm sorry. You know,
Sure.
based off the evidence, you didn't. So for, like you said, for a guy like that to say that, that's probably very credible, and you probably feel very comfortable in saying like, yeah, I believe him.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned skeptic. Like I'm a skeptic as well. Like, but I'm not, like, a lot of the time when people say, hey, somebody's a skeptic, they see him as a naysayer.
Right.
And that's not true. That may be a certain individual, that's like that. But me, I'm a skeptic in the fact as I ask questions and I want to learn. Like, I don't want to just draw a line in the sand. I want to be able to ask questions. I want to be open-minded enough to have conversations, because in what they call the Bigfoot community, there's a lot of lines drawn in the sand where you've got people that are like, it's flesh and blood 100%, it's paranormal 100%, it's extraterrestrial 100%, and they're not communicating with each other because they've drawn a line in the sand of what they're saying it is, even though not one person has been able to prove anything, but they're drawing a line in the sand. All that does is it stops conversation, it stops relationships, it stops learning. And I think, to be somebody that is a well-rounded researcher, number one, they have to be a skeptic to a degree, open enough to have conversations with something that they don't necessarily understand, but also smart enough not to eat everything up to the point where they've made a conclusion off of somebody that just has a powerful voice or a powerful presence in the community, if you will. That makes sense.
So what's your itinerary look like when you go out looking for something like Bigfoot? Like, how does that go?
Well, we usually, we always put up sound recorders throughout our research area. We do have trail cams up, not a lot. We usually have just one up, and we just have certain research areas, and we hang out there. We listen. We've had weird experiences. Again, in the distance, we've heard, something walking, where a couple of the other people that were on the team, to them, it sounded like it was walking on two legs. I played in bands for years, so I can't hear things like that. To me, it's just like I can hear something, but I couldn't tell you if it's on all fours. I couldn't tell you if specific. Excuse me. Exactly. So we go out, and sometimes we'll have an agenda. Like, it wasn't last summer, but it was the summer before. We went out and we did call blasting. And what we did was we brought a speaker out and a laptop, because we talk a lot about the indigenous folks, how they lived, again, in harmony with them. So we went out and we played Native American drumming and chanting in the middle of the woods, which I always tell people, if you've never done this, just go ahead and do it, because it's amazing. It's an amazing experience. You got to picture it like this. It's pitch black. You're in the middle of nowhere in the woods, totally pitch black. And you hear in the distance, you hear Native American chanting and drumming. I got to tell you, it's the coolest thing I think I've experienced, like, in my entire life, except for the first time I went on a Ferris wheel as a kid. I'm telling you, it's just such a cool experience. But so we did that. Like, so again, every once in a while we'll go out, we'll experiment with something. And the whole point of doing that was to see if we were going to get any type of response. Again, are we going to get something that's going to come up to us? Because, over the years, Sasquatch and Native Americans they even say that they communicated with each other. We didn't necessarily know exactly what the chanting was saying in it. So at the same time, if you think about the spiritual realm, we were kind of setting ourselves up to be scared at the same time, because, who knows what it was manifesting.
Right.
But so we wanted to do that to see if it was going to draw something in. Again, we could hear something walking in the distance. A couple individuals on the team, Gary being one of them, said to him it sounded like it wasn't on all fours, like it was walking on 2 feet. Again, I couldn't make out the difference. But we never saw what it was.
Right.
We never saw anything. We could just hear it. And then we ended up packing up, and then we ended up leaving. And as we got out near where the cars were, we could see in the distance, way, way, way in the distance in the woods, you could just see this light just sitting there. And it was from the area that we had come from. It was just sitting there, and it would flicker a little bit every once in a while, but it wouldn't go anywhere. Now, this is an area that we've been researching for years, even prior to me being with the group. So, Gary knows the area. It wasn't swamp gases, creating the light. It wasn't a hiker. It wasn't anything like that, because obviously if it was a flashlight, you would have seen it moving, but it was just that light that was just sitting there. And, so it was one of those things, did what we, performed, did it manifest something, and something started coming up. And I don't like thinking about that, because when it comes to spirits and anything, I avoid all that. I run from that. I like researching monsters and different things like that want to get away from you, that don't want to attach themselves to you.
I'm the same way. I'm like, keep that voodoo stuff away from me.
Yeah. It's not my, like when Tri-City Paranormal Society goes out, like I don't go with them. I'm like, hey, have a good time, guys. Enjoy, be safe. So
that's it sounds like it's kind of like a paranormal investigation almost, where you guys set up microphones, you set up trail cam.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys are doing this overnight, so it's almost like a camping scenario.
Yeah, I mean, what we'll usually do is we'll get in the area, let's say maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And we usually will stay till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because our research area is about an hour and a half from where we live. So we'll usually wrap it up. And then, there's times where, some members have stayed and camped. Usually we'll do it during the week, not on the weekend, because on the weekend, everybody's in the woods.
Right.
So if you're out there and you're yelling, you're doing one of the Hollywood, Bigfoot screams to try to see if you can get something back. Well, 4 miles away, there's another group out there doing the same exact thing. And now you guys are just doing it back and forth with each other. So we actually go during the week, when there's is there a chance people are in the woods? Absolutely. But the chance of them being in the woods as much as on the weekends, not as much. So a lot of the recorders that we put up, we've actually picked up and recorded some really interesting things. Like, for instance, they always talk about the tree knocks. Well, we wanted to test a theory that they weren't using sticks, that if a tree knock was actually a rock up against a tree. So we were taking the rocks, throwing them up against the tree. And every single time it was that same exact like crack noise, where with a stick, it was always different depending on the width of the stick, how old it was. And 9 times out of 10, that stick blows up in your hands, because it's on the ground. Why is it on the ground? Because it's already rotted and it's fallen off. And then if you look at the flesh and blood theory of Sasquatch, and, they relating it to, potential, apes, gorillas, what do? They have rocks, they clang rocks together, they throw rocks at trees. So we just said, for the heck of it, let's try it out. Let's see what it sounds like. So we're up close, we're throwing rocks at the tree. Sounds exactly right. But we're like, this isn't very loud. So this, this theory really isn't relevant. We ended up leaving some people at one of the areas, and me and another individual on the team, we went way out, probably, well, I don't want to say way out, but probably like 500 to 600 yards away from where they were. Told them to throw the rocks at the tree. And when they did it, even though it didn't really make that much of a noise at the location where we were, we could hear it loud and clear. So we're like, okay, well, maybe exactly. So we're like, well, maybe there is something to this. So we've got two-way radios, and so Gary said, hey, I'm going to throw a rock at the tree, and then we're just going to be quiet. So he did that. So we're just sitting there, we're listening. Again, it made that nice crack noise, like you hear on other recordings. And we just sat there, and about 45 seconds later, out in the distance, we heard the same exact sound come back. And by chance, we were lucky enough to actually have that on one of our digital recorders, so we were able to hear it back. So,
but it wasn't from you guys, or
it was not from us.
Wow.
that was not from us. So what does that mean? Does that mean there was a Sasquatch there? No, absolutely not. But we also can't say that it wasn't. I mean, we went through like what it could be. For instance, this was like 2:00 in the morning. So sometimes when there's wind, you don't feel it down below. But if you look up, you'll see the trees kind of swaying, and they'll make like a little crack noises here and there. Right. And so, we looked at that. No tree swaying. It was again, 2 a.m. in the morning, no wind, nothing. So again, we're not saying that it was Sasquatch related, but we're also not saying that it's not, because we have no clue. Right. We weren't able to see anything. We just happened to hear that back and by chance catch it on the recorder, which was awesome, because when you do different conferences and festivals, it's always nice to bring things like that you can't necessarily explain for the listeners that are there to hear you speak. So back in September, I was at the Whitehall, New York Sasquatch Calling Festival, and I was speaking there. I was able to actually play that for individuals. But again, be able to tell them, I don't know what this was, but this falls in line with what we know and what we speak about.
Is there speculation on what the tree knocks are for? Is that like a communication, or like what do you guys think that's about as far as the Sasquatches?
There's many theories. Some say that it is a communication, but not with you. It's with other Sasquatches in the area. Like, for instance, some people have said that they've heard 3 knocks, and they're like, well, what does 3 knocks mean? Well, then they realize, well, there was 3 of them. Maybe it was communicating, saying, hey, there's a disturbance out here. There's something out here. These people or whatever, and hey, there's 3 of them. So there's many different theories of what it could mean. At the end of the day, it could very well mean absolutely nothing and have absolutely nothing to do with it. But there's been a lot of weird things that individuals have come forth saying, hey, this is why I think this is this. That really kind of makes you step back and think about it.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever noticed, or has anybody ever explained to you, how like when like a tornado or a natural disaster comes around, it's like certain people that are in tune with their senses notice that like things get quiet, there's no sound. Have you noticed that with people that have seen Sasquatches? Is that common too? Like where like they notice like something's real eerie or quiet right before they see them? Or
yeah, many times. Before some of the experiences that we've had when our group's been out, there's been times where it's kind of gotten quiet. You're just sitting there and you're like, wow, wait a minute. It's just completely quiet.
Yeah.
And then you hear then you hear something, moving way out in the distance. Again, it could be a bear, it could be something. So everything around is quiet. But there was one time where we were standing there and there were small pebbles that were kind of being chucked at us. Now, so there's some theories of what that could actually be. Like, did it come at us directly like this, or was it coming from above?
Right.
Meaning, exactly. Because, birds build nests. They come down, they pick stuff up off the ground to build nests. Squirrels do that. So you're banging on trees, you're disrupting this, you're doing that. There's a good chance you could have something fall from a nest and hit you. So this though seemed like it was coming, I guess, more of kind of like this coming in,
like being thrown at you.
Exactly, but very small. So, but I have to ask myself, if something was trying to throw something at us to get us out of there, and it's 8 to 10 feet tall, let's say, why would it pick up something like that big?
Yeah.
So I always have to question, when I hear it, and really question our experience, because again, if something's got these huge hands, how in the world are they going to pick up this tiny little thing and then go like that? Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense to me. So again, it seemed like it was coming in at an angle, but again, it could have been coming out of the tree, coming down at an angle at us. But
and I don't know if you've read it from your Native American research, but the gentleman that I had on, the Navajo tribesman, Garrett, he said that they're like very childish and playful.
I've heard
So
that.
like,
Yes.
yeah, so like the little rocks and stuff kind of like reminded me of that, because they do that. They like to play like little child's games and be very playful with you and stuff. He said that they
Well,
like whisper in his ear and tickle him all the time and stuff, like weird stuff like that. I was like, oh wow.
one of the things that we say in the New York Bigfoot Society, and Gary's talked about this a lot, that we're their entertainment, even though we feel like we're going out there and they're kind of like our entertainment. In reality, we're kind of their entertainment, which I gotta tell you, it's got to be funny, from a point of view, watching, people running around slamming trees and doing this and doing that, and then yelling. So it's actually very entertaining.
Right. So yeah, what do you think Gary's story is probably the most credited you've ever heard, or what's your most credited story you've ever heard, where you can say like, wow, that's probably like one of the most truthful but insane stories I've ever heard?
I would definitely have to say Gary's, just because we've had so many conversations together and we've come really close together, and we know each other. Like he knows he can't BS me, and I know I can't BS him. And we know that we don't want that when it comes to what we're doing and the research that we're doing. So I would have to say the most credible, just because of association, would be Gary. But I will say that the book that released back in March of 2020, American Cryptids, I covered all 50 states and talked about some history on the state. Each chapter opened up with a history of whatever state we were talking about. Talks about a Native American tribe, how they lived, what they ate, how they hunted, different things like that. And then it covers the popular cryptid from that state. Like if it's West Virginia, I covered the Mothman, talked about some encounters. But I closed every single chapter out with a Bigfoot sighting from that state. And so I talked to probably 100 different individuals, even though there's only 50 states. But there's some individuals where, I talked to them. I'm like, so I heard you had a Sasquatch encounter. Oh yeah, I've seen Bigfoot. I'm like, well, how many times? Well, I've seen him hundreds of times. I'm just like, click, it's like, come on, so, but what I ended up going with, the encounters, the majority, I'd say 90% of the encounters that I went with, that I put in the book, were individuals that weren't looking. Because those, to me, are the most credible, because they didn't believe prior, still don't believe, they still don't know what the heck they saw, they just know it fits the description, and the emotion that comes out of them when they're telling the story. Somebody that's researching out this and that, they're calm, cool, collective, blah blah blah. These people, calm and cool at first, some a little, holding back a little bit, because again, it's a weird subject and they're still trying to figure it out themselves. But as they start giving the account, they kind of come across with a different type of emotion that you can actually feel. Like they experienced something, they don't know what it was, they know that it fit this description. Some of them told me, I couldn't tell if it was a Bigfoot or not. All I know is there was this huge something. And I put that in the book over one that said, 100% a Bigfoot. And it was banging on the house. It was knocking windows out. Because most Sasquatch Bigfoot sightings are 3 seconds at the most. And again, I wanted to write the book in a different manner than a lot of the books that have been written, because all the greats have written books. So how am I going to write a book and it stand out and even be different? So that's why I covered all 50 states, and I came up with the formula of how each chapter was going to go. But again, the Sasquatch sightings, or the supposed Bigfoot sightings, these people weren't looking. The majority of them weren't looking. They were just out kind of doing their own thing. And that was really, for me, that was really moving. And it kind of personalized the book. It made it a little more personal, because I would rather somebody, if I have an encounter and I know somebody else who had an encounter, but they weren't doing what I was doing. They just happened to come across it, and somebody wanted my encounter for a book. I'd be like, I'll give you my encounter, but this person over here is going to give you an encounter that's really going to resonate with people in the Bigfoot community and people who aren't in the community, but have witnessed something that they don't understand. And I think you're going to get a lot more connection with readers, and you're going to be doing something different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like with people who aren't looking for it, or it's unexpected, it's like traumatic for them. It's like life changing, you know?
Yeah.
There's guys like us that are like so open to like UFOs and paranormal activity and cryptids and stuff like that. So if we seen it, we would probably be like ecstatic, excited, blown back. But it would be like the next day, we'd be like, well, we knew this all along. But for somebody
Right.
who's out there just camping with their family, and all of a sudden you get a 8-foot hairy creature come walking at you, you're gonna be blown out of your socks. You know, like, what the hell did I just see?
Oh, 100%. And, I know a lot of like the TV shows kind of get a bad rap, and, for this or that, well, whatever. But what I got to say again, like, I love the show Finding Bigfoot. I love the show. I've watched every episode. I've got the DVDs. I just spoke at Crypticon with Cliff Brackman, Matt Moneymaker, Renee, awesome people. That show really put Bigfoot and Sasquatch on the map.
Mm-hmm.
It really did overall. It really opened up a lot of avenues. Unfortunately, it did. You've got a lot of people now that, are like, wow, this looks like it's cool. Hey, let's create a team. Let's come up with a team name. Let's make matching t-shirts, and let's go out in the woods. And not one of them has ever gone out in the woods, and they know nothing about safety. They know nothing when it comes to the woods. So I think in a sense, some people have become reckless because of that. But, but again, it's like these shows put Sasquatch on the map, and, people are like, well, because of these shows, everybody's talking about Bigfoot now. Well, 15, 20 years ago, if you talked about Bigfoot, it was cliche. You're a goober, you're a nut job. Well, now that it's become mainstream, people are kind of coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, you know what? I did see something that I don't necessarily understand. And so where before you were ridiculed for saying that you witnessed something that you couldn't explain, or you believed to be Sasquatch or Dogman or whatever it was, again, you were ridiculed. Now it's cool to have an encounter, which also brings in another aspect of people over exaggerating, wanting attention. But, we need to, as researchers, be able to distinguish the difference. But for the people that have been holding on to something, now there's actually people they can reach out to and say, hey, I don't know what the hell this was, but I saw it.
Without feeling
so
crazy,
it's a good thing. Exactly.
Right. So have you ever had anybody come to you and say that they had like a bad experience, or like a terrifying, like an attack, or like somebody being taken captive, or felt like they were trying to be taken captive or something like that with Bigfoot?
I've read of stories. I've had people talk to me about encounters where they believe like the Sasquatch had violent tendencies. One of the encounters that I have in my book was an individual who was fishing, and for a creature that doesn't want to be seen, why it would pick up a huge tree trunk or stick and start hitting the tree, getting its attention with all these wood pieces flying on them, is beyond me. Of course, there's theories that it was territorial.
Right.
There was a young Sasquatch in the area, and it was trying to distract it to, save the Sasquatch. There was a female in the area that it was trying to protect. There's also some that say, based off the fact that they're so human-like, that like us, they can have, ailments that we could have, dementia. They could have different things like that. So I have talked with individuals that, have had encounters that didn't fall in line with like the normal, hey, there it is, it's gone. And again, I put one of those in my book because it was one of those guys that wasn't looking.
Right.
What wasn't looking, just took off, grabbed its stuff and took off. And that was it. Came back later looking for footprints. And one of the things that he had said to me was like, we didn't see any. Okay, well, that's awesome. That's awesome because that's normal. That does happen.
Right.
It's great to find footprints, but if you find evidence at every single sighting and every single encounter, then you got to kind of start questioning, wait a minute, why? The wood chips were there, everything that, he was saying when he went back with some friends, but didn't find any footprints, didn't find anything like that.
Right. I'm almost wondering if some people were just so terrified themselves too that they might have exaggerated or over exaggerated what they experienced
Yeah.
out of fear
Yeah.
too. So something that might have been like not so like harmful, like was traumatic for them.
Right. Yep. No, absolutely. And that's the other thing too, is, when I'm talking with different individuals, I try to take that into consideration too, because for some people, like I know people that when they're scared, like all they're doing is smiling.
Mhm.
And like they're all like pumped up, like they're not scared. That's just the way that their body chemistry works, and that's how they deal with it. So I always take that into account too when I'm talking with somebody. If they're sitting there, they're kind of smirking when they're talking with me. I'm looking at body language. I'm looking at the way that they're looking off to the side when they say certain things. I'm watching different things, just to see, okay, do I need to reel this person back in, to reality? Should I stop the interview now, or what's going on, to really kind of get the information. And again, I've had some people tell me some crazy things, and if it's true, if that's what they feel they experienced, okay. I'm not calling them crazy, but when I say crazy, I just mean like something that's just like, wow, that's crazy type of situation.
Right. Have you ever noticed that like attachment cases, kind of like how like they talk about in UFOs, like you hear certain cases of like, oh, my parents saw UFOs or were abducted by UFOs, and now I'm abducted by UFOs. Is there any cases like that in the Sasquatch realm, as far as
Um,
like being passed down from generation, or that attachment of like, hey, I see them multiple times now when I go camping once a year, or I get like a creepy feeling.
there's people that talk about that they've actually, generations have grown up with them still to this day.
Wow.
That somebody that was a child grew up seeing this one over and over and over again, and it's grown up. They're old now, they're in their 80s. That same Sasquatch has gray hair and now is a grandparent to a family.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's definitely conversations like that have happened, that people to this day. And I mean, even in New York, I hear stories
Right.
about that, where they've grown up on the property, they've seen them. It's normal for them. And the thing is a lot of the time they won't tell you where the property is.
Mhm.
Now, if somebody's like calling up production companies and they're doing all this and they're doing all that, and that kind of throws up some red flags, because it's like, okay, well, not so the whole generation being passed down this and that, you're not ready to give that up to the world. That
Right.
usually that doesn't sit right. But 9 times out of 10, these individuals will make you sign paperwork saying that you're not going to. It's nothing about this area. You don't know, after you leave here, you don't know how to get to this area.
Mhm.
Nobody
Yeah,
comes
it's
to
almost
this
like
area.
sacred to them.
It is. It's very, very sacred. And again, because it's something that's been passed down, over the years. So
Right. So basically, what's kind of like your end game as far as like being on the Sasquatch, what the New York Bigfoot Society and stuff like that? Is it like your ultimate goal is just to experience a Bigfoot?
it depends on which day you ask me. It really does. I'm brutally honest. There's days where I feel like that's the goal. And then there's other days where I just don't know. It's always like this with me. Again, I'm one of those guys where if you ask me one day, hey, if you'd asked me a year and a half ago, hey, where are you at with Flesh and Blood? Year and a half ago, I was 95%.
Mhm.
Now I'm again at 50%. So I really don't have any end game. And I really don't want there to be an end game, because again, with the end comes the end. And
Right. It's
so
the thrill of the chase, man.
exactly. And You know, the beautiful part about this community too, you know, like with any community, you know, you've got haters, you've got problems with this person, that person, you know, talking about this person, that person. Overall, the unexplained community, and that includes, you know, Bigfoot, paranormal, extraterrestrial, it really is a beautiful community of people. And again, another reason I don't want to be an end game is that I don't want events to stop happening. I don't, there's a lot of things that come with it that I really enjoy, and I enjoy meeting different people. And so the whole, everything in a whole is just, I guess that's kind of also what keeps me going, is that there's so much going on, and there's so much to do, and there's so many people that to meet and just have conversations with that, I don't know, I really can't see an end game in play. I just see the game, and you know, we've gone into extra innings, and we're still tied. It's, you know, inning number 23 and we're still tied. So that's where I'm at right now with it.
Right on, man. Well, hey, man, I want to appreciate you for coming on the show. Like I said, I ordered your book. It should be here by tomorrow. I'm super excited to dive into that. And if you're up for it, I'm looking forward to having you on the show again to talk about some other cryptid creatures.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can put you in touch with Gary too, who's just extraordinary, just an awesome guy. I mean, he can talk paranormal, he can talk cryptid, he can talk whatever, man. I'll tell you, he brings an interesting show. I can tell you that.
I would love that, man. We'll have to make that happen. But
Awesome.
definitely, thank you for having coming on, and I'll get you a copy of this as soon as it's edited and ready and all that stuff too.
Awesome.
Make sure you got it. All right, man. I appreciate it, Kenny. You have a good night.
All right, you too. Thanks, buddy.
Right.